When people ask, when's the best time to plan? Well, start looking at it. Hi, Jeff Marsocci, the Plain English Attorney, and I am here today with Mike Brooks, and we are going to talk care assistance planning. Now, Mike and I have been working together for many years, and we're working on a lot of different cases together right now. And one of the specific areas where we're getting a lot of questions and where there's a lot of information needed, good information, is surrounding the area of Huntington's disease. So I'm going to talk with Mike a little bit about care assistance planning and go into some of the things that we've seen that can really kind of help plan ahead. So, Mike, tell us a little bit about what we're defining as care assistance planning.
Absolutely. In its basic sense, care assistance planning is just a proactive approach to preparing for the possibility of needing long-term care
Hmm.
as you age. It encompasses a wide range of considerations, including but not limited to financial planning, healthcare decisions, legal arrangements, and emotional and support networks.
Okay. Yeah, there's a lot there. Now, it's probably fair to talk a little bit about us and what we do in our capacities because I'm an estate and Medicaid planning attorney. I do a lot in the care assistance, and I'm also a certified Medicaid planner. I tend to work a lot on overall strategy and working with trusts and other types of documents and strategies. Mike works an awful lot on the financial and insurance end and knows an awful lot about the different companies and the assets. So, yeah, I've been doing estate planning for more years than I care to mention. And I've even authored a couple of books.
If you think it's important for educational videos like this to get out there, then please help us out by subscribing to the channel.
Mike's been right there with me for how many years now? Is it?
It will be 8 years this September.
Wow. Okay. So, yeah, we've been working together on a lot of things for quite a number of years.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've learned a lot, especially since I started working with you more in the estate planning source side of things.
Yeah.
And it's been great to learn and just develop my professional abilities working with you. I would say my background is I've been licensed with the state of North Carolina for about 18 years in long-term care, life, and Medicare. And that's kind of how I got started in the industry, was dealing with the long-term care needs for my own grandfather.
Hmm. Yeah, and well, really, the way I ended up getting involved with first estate planning and then also the whole care assistance planning end of things is because of my grandmother's plural. My father's mother ended up going through quite a bit with an estate when my grandfather passed on. And of course, I'm in law school. My proud grandmother's calling me up and asking me questions. And I'm like, well, look, I'm just a law student. I'm doing research. But that really kind of set me on a path to try to figure out how can we avoid problems by planning ahead and setting things up the right way. And that led me to things like revocable living trusts and other types of trusts. Now, my grandmother on my mother's side, she ended up having dementia and it was looking like it was going to bankrupt my grandfather just paying for all of that care. However, they contacted, it was actually the father of a high school friend of mine was an attorney in this particular area. And I saw the things that he did, and I'm like, this is exactly what I need to do. And he was able to preserve that, the house and a whole bunch of other assets, and my grandmother qualified for Medicaid to handle those bills. My grandmother was in a facility, gosh, it was more about 7 years. And she was physically very, very healthy. In fact, she was walking around the nursing home doing laps, and the nurses were like, okay, we got to measure this. She was walking more than 10 miles a day, just doing the corridors, making rounds, stopping with people, talking with people, do another couple of laps. She'd come back to that same person and not remember she just spoke to them. But she kept very active and healthy physically, but she still needed to be in that environment for about 7 years. So,
My story is a little different. Grandfather was a veteran, but he did not have TRICARE,
mhm,
which is full retired health insurance benefits for military.
mhm,
But he did have Medicare. But what Medicare's benefits are when it comes to facility based care is very limited.
yeah,
It requires prior hospital admissions. There's a limited or finite amount of days that they pay for benefits, um, and then you're on your own. And that's only if it's something that's considered
mhm,
recovery, like
yeah,
rehabilitative or acute care. If it's custodial, then they stop benefits right away.
yeah,
So we were juggling um, him going to the hospital for some complication, then into a facility that's near the hospital. So this was in Wilmington, North Carolina, New Hanover Regional. I think it's Novant now. It's a long stretch of street on South 16th, and there's a lot of different things there, all medical related, doctors'
mhm,
offices, etc., and nursing homes. And so he would go from the hospital to the nursing home. We would have him there for a few months. Then we would bring him to my parents' house, and we would care for him at home.
mhm,
And then another complication would arise, and he
uh,
would go get admitted to the hospital. And because it was a different reason, and he was there and back in the nursing facility, and we
yeah,
and he spent everything he
uh,
had pretty much before he passed away. So it was like we didn't have the extra insurance, we didn't have a pre-plan. We were just taking it, one step at a time, and it was hard because I moved back in with my parents from college for a few years to
mhm,
do this, to help care for him. And it was all on us.
yeah,
So, the pre planning is the proactive approach is the only way to go about it. And that's what's led me down this path, is to ensure that we can provide worry free futures,
yeah.
for our people, our clients.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit, and let's be a little more specific when it comes to things like
Yeah, absolutely.
HD. We're doing pre-planning or just planning in general. Uh, when people ask, when's the best time to plan? Well, start looking at it now. It doesn't matter if you're 18 or you're 80. Start looking at the planning now to see where you are. And the longer you have to plan, the more you can do. So I know we've been getting a lot of questions, and people are in various stages of needing care, but being able to stop, put together a plan that works for you is going to end up really helping out in the long term. Doesn't mean that plan is set in stone either. Things can adjust, things can change, life changes. You could be healthier for a lot longer, but it's important to try to sit down and get that done as soon as possible. So, like,
I
talk
agree.
about
I
some of
think
your
it's natural to avoid. Well, it's natural to avoid thinking about these things, um, but it does. The proactive approach can significantly impact the quality of your life in the future.
all right, well,
I think.
let's go
Yep.
ahead
Let's
and
jump
just
in.
come up with a scenario, and one that we've seen. Somebody's calling, "Look, I know that HD runs in the family. I haven't been diagnosed. What should I be doing?" And it's just they're they want to be proactive and plan, but they don't know where to start.
Absolutely. I think we come across with HD is you have some that are they know it's in the family, they know they have a risk, but they've not tested. They don't
Mhm.
have any, say, medical records with a history of it, and they don't have symptoms. That is going to allow you to be able to look at all available options, as opposed to if you've already been diagnosed, you have symptoms. You may not have all available options, but there's certainly several out there to look at.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about those options, and then we'll kind of come into what should everybody have. I could talk a little bit on the legal end, but tell us a little bit about the options you're talking about first.
Oh, sure. Well, at first, I like to anticipate the future needs when we
Hmm.
sit down. So I think it's important for the HD Reach folks that we're working with that they do take our care assistance planning questionnaire that we
Yeah.
provide and take the time to really fill that out. It's so important that, and I think you said it best the other day when we were talking, is that if we don't know, don't worry. When you get to the point of applying for Medicaid or any other thing, they're going to know,
Yeah.
right? They're going to find out. There's going to be records of everything. So we want it. The reason we ask so many questions is so that we're able to say, okay, you got to navigate things this way.
Hmm.
Um, but the anticipating of the future needs is essential, so that we know, what kind of changes can you expect, what kind of challenges,
Hmm.
what kind of limitations mobility wise you might have, cognitive changes, how soon do or would there be a need for assistance with daily living,
Hmm.
because then you're going to form a comprehensive plan to address those needs. So from my approach would be, insurance is a great tool. I like it when I'm not the one writing the check. So if
Yeah.
the insurance company's wallet is paying for this, that's a major relief. Um, so there's the traditional long-term care insurance, which has been around since probably around the 80s. When I first got licensed in the state of North Carolina, there were dozens and dozens of companies that sold these traditional long term care policies. So, in exchange for a premium monthly or annually, in return, you received a pool of money. And just consider, like you have a swimming pool of money. And then if you qualified due to assistance with your daily living activities or cognitive decline, then you could go into the pool and receive either a daily benefit or a monthly benefit based on what you selected on the policy.
Hmm.
And you would receive that for a set amount of time until you exhausted the pool of money. And if you used that insurance, well, good, you made the right call. But if you were, say, like my great uncle George Medley in Georgia, he just passed away at 93 in his sleep 2 weeks
Hmm.
ago. I mean, that's the absolute best way to go. And he never needed to use long term care insurance. But if he had had an insurance policy, he would have lost all the money that he paid into it.
Yeah.
Um, and an issue with those policies is they've been underestimated on the claims payout by the insurance companies. So in exchange, when the cost of the claims goes up, they go to the Department of Insurance and request a permission to increase the price on the consumer. So
Yeah.
then you start getting these letters as you age saying, "Oh, your insurance premium is going to increase 20% or 25% over the next 3 years," and you have a choice of either coughing up the extra dollars or reducing the pool of money that you have, or some of the benefits that you receive with that pool
Yeah.
of money. And so it dwindles down the original plan.
Yeah.
Um, yep.
Yeah. But now
So
we've got
that,
alternatives.
yeah, right. And so there's now only three companies that still do that type of insurance. And if you've had one of those policies for a long time, it's not uncommon that you've gotten a letter that this company took over that company, and you, like a mortgage sometimes
Yeah.
happens. You get companies buying out your mortgage. They do that with the insurance policies, but your benefits are still there if you've kept the premium. They're always guaranteed renewable as long as you pay.
Hmm.
So that's one of the big things is like don't miss a payment. um, uh, and I guess that's where we can talk more about the legal side of things too, while
Yeah.
having those documents in place so that your family members can step in and make sure those bills are getting paid if they need to, so that you don't lose the benefits at the wrong time. But the industry has transitioned over time. I would say those are obsolete types of policies. Um, we like to look at things that are, when I do the planning, that are going to be permanent.
Hmm.
We don't want to put a solution in place that if you can no longer work a few years down the road, and you have a reduction in income, um, we don't want you to have to lose your benefits. So
Yeah.
we're going to approach that, by anticipating the future needs. Like, well, what if, okay, you do you have disability insurance? Are you able to, where are we going to get your income from if you can no longer work due to the disease? How do we approach that, right? Well, how do we come up with a permanent solution so that even when that situation happens, the plan is still there. And
Yeah.
maybe that's when we start tapping into some of the insurance. Maybe it's not. It just
Hmm.
depends. But again, we want to look at permanent solutions, um, something that's not going to be circumstantial to whether or not the insurance company decides to raise the cost,
Yeah.
right? Uh, or you have to reduce the benefits. And um, again, it's how do we approach it like that is what I
Yeah.
would say.
Now, and this is one of the things that I like about the fact that there are so many different options and there are different companies that do different things, that finding the right fit for an individual, you got to know what you're doing, but you can find something that is very well suited to a individual situation just because there's so
Yeah,
much that's out there. Now, I know we
that's
could
correct.
we could end up geeking out and talking for hours just on that insurance end. But
Yeah, and
you mentioned the legal documents that kind of everyone needs to make sure that if you do get to a point where you're not making decisions as well on your own, or you just completely can't, that there are people taking over. Uh, and I'm sure you've had a couple of cases where these documents were critical to helping your clients. I call it the big five, potentially the big six that everyone should have. You know, 18 and up, maybe a little closer to 22, 23 up, you need all five. But at the bare minimum, the top two, a durable general power of attorney and a healthcare power of attorney. So the durable general power of attorney lets somebody step in and handle any financial and legal things on your behalf. They're kind of taking your place. And this is just commonly referred to as power of attorney. On the healthcare end, it's who would be making medical and healthcare decisions for you if you can't. So you're always able to make your own decisions until you can't make those decisions, or you can't communicate those wishes. Someone else is stepping in, and so you're naming people in both cases to step in and make these decisions on your behalf. Now, some of the other documents that are rounding out that big five, there's a last will and testament. So this is what everybody thinks about. Oh, I need the document that says, here's where my stuff goes when I pass on. There are alternatives to a last will and testament being the main part of an estate plan, but it's still part of those big five documents at a basic level, listing who you want to be executor and who you would want to get whatever assets you have left when you pass on. The fourth document, getting a little bit back more onto the healthcare end, there's the living will, also known as a declaration of a desire for a natural death. Now, for a living will, this is just, well, I don't know if there's any nicer way to say it. It's what my clients joke around and say, oh, that's the pull the plug document. They joke about that, but that can become an absolutely critical document that says, look, if I've reached the point where I'm terminal and incurable, I'm in a persistent vegetative state, the doctors don't think there's any coming back, but they can keep me hooked up to the machines and the nutrition and the hydration and knock on wood, keep your fingers crossed, hope for some kind of miracle. But that's the point when most of my clients are saying, look, just let me go at that point. This document is you saying that's what you want. So no one else has to actually make the decision for you. I've had a lot of clients that carried around a lot of guilt because they had to make that decision for a parent or some other relative, and they still felt guilty, and it's 10 years later. Now, finally, that fifth document, a nomination of conservator, and this is naming someone who would be a guardian for you more long term. So if somebody felt that you needed to have an actual legal guardian, you they could go to court and get a judge to appoint a guardian. And North Carolina is pretty good. They have a guardian of the person and a guardian of the estate. Other states and jurisdiction, no, it's one person does all of it, but that's again, that's state to state. Now, here's one thing that I want to put out there because I've heard this several times recently. If you have a child with HD or for any other thing for that matter, and you're worried, well, wait, they're turning 18. The bank's telling me I'm not going to be able to help them with their finances anymore. And they go, oh, go to court and get guardianship. Whoa, 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 whoa. Wait a minute here. Hold off. If your child is 18 and they are capable of executing their own power of attorneys, I mean, they're cognitive enough to know who they are, who their relatives are, and they have a general sense and idea of what this document does. It's empowering someone else to handle something for you. They can sign that power of attorney. When you get guardianship, you have to keep going to court and justify everything. It's kind of what we call living probate. It is a whole court process where you have to justify every penny that you've spent on their behalf to the court. A power of attorney is not that formal. You still have to keep records, but you don't have to keep going back to a court. So if your child can execute that power of attorney as they're turning 18, that is a far easier and better solution. So that's again part of planning ahead is having at least those basic documents.
I totally agree. There's numerous times where the power of attorney has really saved a lot of frustration and time and anxiety. Where even with a husband and a wife, for a spouse to enact a benefit, and I'm thinking in my head from experience with long-term care insurance or
Hmm.
just our insurance and financial companies in general, where they require a POA, a
Hmm.
power of attorney, in order for the spouse to make the decisions on their spouse's policy, and they're because it's not always a joint type of arrangement. And without that document, the insurance company is going to decline any paperwork you submit.
Hmm.
And with a copy of the power of attorney, and I think in the most cases, the only thing I've ever seen required in addition to that form was maybe an affidavit that was just the person who had the power of attorney stating that this is the most current document that the individual had. So you're
Yeah.
taking a little bit of the liability off the insurance company or the financial company for giving you permission to do things, because you've signed the affidavit. And that, along with the power of attorney, gives you full permission to handle all the matters.
Yeah.
And that, so without that document, again, you're, like you said, it could be something as simple as one or two forms and a couple days of processing into several weeks or months of dealing with court and getting legal guardianship or something like that, where you can act on behalf of the insured or the individual.
Yeah. Okay, well, this is probably a good time. Let's talk a little bit about some of the different care options that are out there for different phases, and how do you end up paying for it?
Absolutely. I think understanding the cost of long-term care, which is tied directly into the various services, including nursing homes, assisted living facilities, in-home care, and then of course medical expenses.
Hmm.
Um, so I would say in-home care services is ideal. It's every couple years when I continue my education, um, the 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 history has proven that staying at home is the best way to have a to quality of life and for faster recovery from things.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I think you can range from just general nursing care services in home to full skilled nursing care, as well as various types of therapies, occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech therapy. All these different categories are all services that can be provided at home.
Hmm.
But when you're looking at $20 an hour for general nursing care and $28 an hour for skilled nursing care, and then $25 an hour for the physical therapist, it easily racks into the hundreds of dollars a day.
Yeah,
Yeah. So just because it's at home doesn't mean it's less expensive. In fact, it can be the opposite.
yeah.
Then I have several clients that they started in home care services, or one of the spouses may not be able to care for the other one at home. So it made more sense just to look at assisted living facilities.
Hmm.
uh, this is like a supportive environment for folks who need assistance with daily activities but don't require around the clock care.
Okay.
And those, they're going to be providing various types of services and amenities, including meals, housekeeping, transportation, and social activities. Um, so and those things are sometimes hard to get into. They fill up, and you have to get on waiting list. Um, Especially if you want to choose where you go. And then
Yeah.
I would say the third is going to be the full skilled care type of facility where there's doctors on staff at the location. There's it's 24/7 medical care provided there if it needs to be around the clock. And that's, of course, the most expensive.
Okay. Yeah. How do you end up paying for all of this? Now, let me run through a little bit on some of the different programs just because I know that there's a lot of confusion. There's Medicare, there's Medicaid, and there's Medicaid. And that's in addition to whatever private insurance arrangement there might be in place. So, just to give some of these definitions, look, Medicare is health insurance for seniors. So, 65 plus, Medicare, it's rehabilitative care. So, health insurance, you end up getting sick, you end up having to go to a hospital. The idea is we get you up, get you better, and get you out. If you get to a point where it's custodial care now, no, you're not getting better, and you still need this care. All right, that's no longer rehabilitative, so that's not Medicare. That's long-term care. And so that's one version of Medicaid that is out there. That's the one that I primarily work with as a certified Medicaid planner. It's okay, they need skilled nursing care, it usually in a facility. It's going to be ten to $12,000 a month. Oh my gosh, what do we need to do? Okay, we can help you meet the different requirements and meet the different tests and levels and keep as much of your assets secured as possible while still qualifying. But now there's also that other Medicaid that we all hear about. In fact, I think the legislature just finished up a big overhaul of that. That's when it's actually health insurance for people under 65 that meet income requirements uh, as part of the whole Affordable Care Act and other types of programs to help pay for insurance for people who can't otherwise afford it. So these are some different programs that are out there. And that's all in addition to the other types of insurance that's out there that Mike, you deal with a lot of those different things on a pretty regular basis.
That's correct. So with primary health insurance, if you're under 65, and let's, and for folks on with the Huntington disease community, I think the issue sometimes becomes, you're young. The diseases prominently can show up in your 20s and your 30s, is my understanding.
Hmm.
And then if you get to a position where you decline and you're not able to say keep your employment, you're going to have to look at alternatives to the health insurance plan that you've had through the employer.
Hmm.
All right, you know you're going to have ongoing medical care, so we're going to strategize on ways to keep income low.
Hmm.
The Affordable Care Act allows your costs to be based on income only, not assets.
Hmm.
So, with the proper planning on how you get your income, you can you can have a pretty comprehensive major healthcare plan and not go broke. And sometimes we do this when we're bridging a few years between when someone may retire from their job, but they may not be 65 yet. And they're looking at, okay, well, I've got 1 to 2 years before I get Medicare. How do I afford health insurance? I don't want to keep working. Well, we look at alternate ways to keep income low for the Affordable Care Act policies.
Hmm.
Um, Now, if your assets are very, very minimal, and I think this applies to the Medicaid long-term care side of things that you
Hmm.
handle, um, if you're below $2,000 a month in income or in the bank,
In the bank, yeah.
and yeah, and you've got one house, you've got one car, well, then you can be eligible for Medicaid as primary health insurance.
Well,
Um,
we're really on that end, we're talking about the long-term care. That again, I don't want to get too much into a lot of these details specifically. I think it would probably be good for me to talk about that 5-year look ahead plan specifically for long-term care. But let me go ahead and just put out that we've got a lot of good free information at freemedicaidcourse.com. It's just got a copy of my book and a couple of other tools and materials, and even some webinars in there that just talk specifically about qualifying for Medicaid. Uh, Meeting that asset test becomes one of the biggest obstacles, if especially if you're a little older or you've accumulated or inherited a bunch of assets. You don't want to have to go broke in order to qualify for Medicaid. So this is just one thing that we can end up doing. This is the quote the perfect plan ahead. You've got more than 5 years. We can set up an irrevocable property trust to move the real estate into, set up an irrevocable family trust to move whatever monetary and other assets you want to preserve, move it in there. And then 5 years after you transfer it in, that's completely off Medicaid's books. And everybody says, oh, that's great. That's wonderful. Oh, wait a minute. You can't be the trustee of your own trust. It's got to be somebody else. Oh, wait a minute. I'm giving up control of my own assets. Yeah. And actually, technically, you're not even the beneficiary of that family trust. The person you're listing as the trustee is actually the beneficiary. Oh gosh, I don't know if I want to give up that kind of control. Yeah, but if you have the person that you really, really, really trust as your trustee, they can take money out, put it into a bank account they have in their name, and then turn around and pay for that stuff for you. and it still keeps some of those assets off the table for Medicaid. If you trust them that much, then this trust setup can work. Now, Mike and I come at this from different perspectives so we can get together and get an optimal plan for a lot of our clients, because Mike's going to look at the insurance options. I'm going to look further ahead for some of those potential trust options, and together it can end up working. Now, here's one case that I worked on where it didn't end up working. And this Mike wasn't involved in this one because uh, if he were, he would have brought me in a lot sooner. It was a woman whose husband had dementia, and he was getting care at home. He had a fantastic long term care policy, but he had pretty severe dementia, and he was a really big guy. And so he actually needed two large male home health aides. That was the only way. If he got angry or frustrated with something, that was the only way to keep him calm. This policy was paying out $9,500 a month. Well, she comes to me and another professional that Mike and I sometimes work with 4 years and 10 months into that policy, saying, well, this policy runs out in 2 months. What do we do? Well, okay. The ideal would have been, okay, if we got that policy put in place and it was going to take care of things for that 5 years, let's start that 5 year clock with those trusts just before we're starting to tap into those policies, so that the 5 year clock for Medicaid is running concurrently with the 5 year policy, so that when they get to the end, they're not having to private pay and spend down assets for another 5 years. So that would be ideal. So, yeah, my perspective is typically, look, we want to get you qualified for Medicaid as soon as possible while preserving as much as possible. Mike's looking more at some of these other financial vehicles that can help you get the care you need longer. How would you put that?
I think you said it great. I'm almost like approaching it on the opposite perspective, where from my background, I don't want you to need Medicaid.
Yeah.
It is sort of a last ditch effort from my side. But you have to be realistic that there are these costs are very expensive, and you can wipe out an entire family's wealth with just one individual.
Yeah.
And then there's a spouse left behind, there's children left behind, and especially in a family where, like a Huntington disease family, where it's a genetic disease and you have future generations are at risk. Having the estate plan piece is definitely going to make the whole family have a better future.
Yeah.
But I look at the insurance as a tool. And to simply put, like, the younger and healthier you are, the more insurance you can have for the least amount of money.
Yeah.
So I would approach it, as based on age is a big factor of how I look at things. One of the advantages to the way we approach things is, I am an independent insurance advisor. So I'm not limited to just a handful of companies. We can find anything that's available, right? I have several professionals in our network that we work with that if I don't know the answer, I'm going to go and find the answer, and I'm going to take the time to look around and see what's available for your specific situation.
Hmm.
So I try to approach it at, well, we need, since I'm working with you and I understand the concepts of the legal planning, I think I try to target around that 5 years of benefits at a minimum.
Hmm.
That's not always going to be attainable. But if we plan together and we put in a support network, right? Some of it's going to be insurance, some of it's going to be friends and family. and some of it's going to be the legal side of things.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I think we can probably come to a conclusion on this. Otherwise, we could talk for hours
I
about
know.
this
Yeah, we
stuff.
certainly don't want to uh, put people to sleep. um,
Yeah, but I know
I
we'll be
I would
talking again and talking about more stuff. Now, what's the best way to get a hold of you, Mike?
well, so we have, I have my email,
Hmm.
phone number. Um, the fastest way to get a hold of me is simply just schedule a time on my calendar.
Okay.
So if it's HD Reach folks, they're gonna know, they're already gonna have my
Yeah.
contact information.
Yeah.
Um, so it's not hard to get a hold of me,
Yeah.
directly by phone or email. And
Yeah.
then usually we schedule about 90 minutes, just in case. Most of the time, the first consultations are 60 minutes. Um, I think what I'd like to say on this end note, Jeff, if you don't mind, is, and I think about this kind of when you were talking about the gentleman that was running out of long term care
Hmm.
insurance, is don't um, don't shut in and hoard things, like, and don't not seek professional guidance.
Yeah.
um, your family may have good intentions. Your financial advisor may have good intentions, but they might not be the professionals that really understand the overall picture of the legal side as well as the asset side. And it can be overwhelming, but whether you need help with this, the documents, legal documents, or the financial advisor, I think it's just make sure you seek the right professional guidance.
Yeah.
It's You don't want to get to where you're scared to talk to somebody, and yes, it can cost money to do this type of planning, but if it's able to, say, preserve 12 months of assets for the cost of 1 month versus you're just going to lose it all,
Yeah.
then it's certainly worth the time.
Yeah. I kind of call that pinching pennies when you're going to be leaking dollars. It makes sense to invest a little bit up front to try to preserve as much as possible. Now, you can always
Right.
also reach Mike through the law firm just because we work so closely together on a lot
Absolutely.
of cases. So you can get us at livingtrustlawfirm.com. And the number for the office is 919-844-7993. And that can be, depending on who you need to talk to, it could be me or Mike, but my staff knows exactly how to get a hold of Mike if they need to schedule an appointment there too.
Right.
All right.
And
So,
my phone number is 910-612-3439. That's my direct line.
okay. All
So
right.
it's easy.
So, thank you everybody for being with us today. Again, if you want some additional materials, you can check out freemedicaidcourse.com. Again, it's free as the name implies. And as I always tell my clients, please stay safe, plan ahead, and enjoy life. And whatever you do, make it a great day.